What has been the impact of COVID on BA opportunities?
The main thing that we're seeing is there are less opportunities in the market. Processes are taking a lot longer to go through. There are a lot of roles which will be filled internally as opposed to coming out to market, and that can be for a number of reasons. It could be budgetary wise for the client, where they just can't get approvals to go external. So then they look at their internal teams or the internal talent that they have. Or it could be that projects have been cancelled or put on hold, so they then want to move those internal people rather than obviously letting them go and then bringing in new people. So it's obviously easier to move people internally sometimes than onboarding new people. And a lot of that is around some of the processes taking a lot longer as well to go through. We've also seen an increased appetite for organisations to try to bring on BAs in maybe a fixed term capacity, or even if they know where the project will last a certain period of time, which, as we know, some projects can last years, even looking to bring on permanent hire as opposed to day rate contractors.
Are there variation across industries?
We've definitely seen a bit more impact from COVID being on the non-financial services side of things, within some of the, as you can imagine, tourism, transport type industries. Having said that though, what it has meant is quite a lot of organisations have looked at their spend and their costs, and any projects which are non-urgent, non-regulatory, many of those have been put on hold. There's also been some projects where ASIC or some of the regulators have pushed back the deliverable dates, which has had obviously an impact on the BA community that's already working in some organisations. Areas where we feel that there has been strong and ongoing activity, and we predict is probably going to continue for the foreseeable future, is wealth management has been very busy. Superannuation, as you can imagine, with new legislation coming out there, has work that's been going on and ongoing. In the advice space, there's still quite a bit of work happening in there, and life insurance side. Anything that's sort of regulatory risk remediation, then there's still been activity, and we foresee that continuing. On the C&I side of things, we're seeing most activity from our FMCG organisations. So
what's C&I? What? Sorry.
Commerce and industry, sorry. So that would be, anything non-financial services.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think you can probably, if you've been listening to the news, understand that some organisations that are non-financial services are probably looking at maybe their supply chain. So
yeah.
Remember the toilet paper incident?
Yes. Still going up and down.
If you're in Victoria, I think it's an issue again. But yeah, so they're looking at their supply chains and their processes and trying to improve their processes. The other area within outside of financial services where we're seeing potential uplift or ongoing demand is anything online. What we do find, obviously, with those organisations is they can sometimes be a bit smaller or a bit more startup focused, which means they will probably have a direct sourcing strategy that they would try to follow initially, and that could be using their own networks or if they've got an internal talent person.
What are the differences between Sydney and Melbourne market?
Where Morgan McKinley does most of their work within the BA side of things is our strongest market is Sydney or New South Wales, because we work obviously across the whole of New South Wales. And then we have a very growing presence in Melbourne. The Sydney market has remained stronger or stayed a bit stronger than the Melbourne market, to the point where we've even had some people relocate. Because as well, everyone's working remotely. So they've come up for their day one and then they're flown back to Melbourne or driven back to Melbourne on day two, or, after. Yeah. So we've definitely seen it, but Sydney's also a bigger market as well, we find.
Right.
How should BA prepare for post-COVID job market?
I think one bit of advice I would give, and I've actually was kind of thinking about all the advice things I would talk about, but one thing I would say is, really have a bit of a strategic approach to your job search. Approach clients or organisations where you've got previous experience in that domain, or you've worked on similar projects. When the market is tight and competitive, as it is currently, then the first thing line managers or talent people will do is look for very similar project experience. So if you've worked in one of the big financial services organisations on, a specific reg piece, then the chances are another financial service organisation which is doing a similar piece of work will definitely want to speak with you. If you've never worked within that space, it's very likely that that's not going to be the right opportunity for you. And some of the reasons behind that are, it's not just because obviously BA skill sets are transferable. I completely get that. But we're working in a time where it's different. People are working remotely. Your onboarding will be different to what you're used to. So it could be that you come into the office on the first day, you collect your laptop, you collect your phone, and then from day 2, you're working from home or you're working remotely. So it's a bit more challenging in terms of obviously finding out who your stakeholders are, getting across the project and knowing what you need to do. At least if you've worked in that domain and on a similar piece of work previously, that will be a quicker learning curve than if it's something very new. So I think just be mindful of the challenges organisations are having at the moment.
What type of BA are in demand?
It's generally to do with the projects that you've worked on. We historically have probably worked more on the business BA side, but we do cover the technical BA side of things as well. But we do find obviously in a lot of large organisations, a lot of their technical side of things will be done by some of the third-party consultancies. That work may not come out to an agency such as Morgan McKinley, which is probably why we've always worked a bit more on the business side. And I think that's also been a bit of a differentiator for us because that's where our strength is. Whereas I think a lot of agencies, if they're driven from the technical side, they naturally go to the technical BA side of things. But the demand we've seen would definitely be more business focused BAs. And like I was saying before, anything within the superannuation, anything within the regulatory, or obviously lots and lots of remediation work still ongoing. And then on non-financial services side, maybe around the process side, so strong process BAs. We do find within the C&I side of things that they like you more hybrid BAs, so someone that can maybe do the technical and the business side, and that can do with the fact that they could have smaller projects teams or less mature projects teams than some of the large banks, just to do with the pieces of work that they have going on.
What is the forecast and the final conclusion?
I think, hopefully, especially in New South Wales, obviously, Victoria is a slightly different story currently. But within New South Wales, we, touch wood, obviously seem to be coming out of things a bit better. And there seems to be obviously some reduced restrictions. We are hopeful, obviously, we're also in a new financial year now, which has an impact obviously on budgets for many, many organisations. So we are hopeful that with some of the restrictions being lifted in New South Wales and a new financial year for many, many of our organisations and our clients, there will hopefully be some uplift in the BA space over the coming months. A few little things I would just maybe add, or bits of advice to add to the BAs out there that are looking for opportunities. Be flexible and open-minded. At the moment, the market is competitive, it is tight. It's a time where organisations are having to be very cost conscious. So it could be that their budgets are less, so the day rates are slightly less than what they have been, or even for those, you know, those really good, juicy long-term project roles, then they are forced to look at the fixed-term options. So if it's something that you're really wanting to do, just be flexible and open-minded, and appreciate that the company has no choice. And so it's market conditions that are driving these things. And so, you know, we're saying please be flexible and please be open-minded. The other thing we're saying is please also be patient. Processes are taking so much longer than they usually do for a number of factors. The approval processes are taking longer. Everyone working remotely is meaning there's an impact, obviously, on even on interviews being longer to happen, and everyone obviously dealing with the challenges of not being in an office and being together. It's also, you know, when you do join an organisation, like we said before, it could be that you're working from home from day 2, so you might not get to know your team. So what we're advising people is try to know who's on the team and maybe organise a virtual coffee with them. Your recruiter should be able to help with that, but just so you know, sort of feel part of the team and can kind of start being a bit embedded in the culture of the organisation. And then the other thing, like I was saying before, is just have a bit of a strategic approach. So target organisations that you know still going to be needing business analysts, and also look for pieces of work where there is, if you can, it's a long-term project, so you know you're going to have guaranteed work for the next 12 plus months, when hopefully we're then out the other side of COVID.